So now we're in round number 6 of the Infinite Mana League Swiss tournament. We are officially eliminated from the tournament in terms of winning it, in terms of top 8, but you still get to keep playing. If we finish 6-2, we can still get prizes, so that is what we're playing for now, hoping to get into the top 32. So here we are opening up with Dralamar taking on Octopus V2. This is an old rivalry that dates back to the beginning times of GU. A classic one. We've had some great tournament matches in the past. If you look at my old YouTube channel, you will see some of those. The old FakeMews 9 TV channel, but this is a situation where the least meaningful matchup we've ever played. We're both pretty much eliminated from this tournament. I'm playing Dralamar, which is a combo deck, and he is playing Control Deception. So I want to set up an OTK. He wants to cutthroat my Dralamar, and that's what this game is going to be about. So here I'm foreseeing. I like the Librarian's Prayer because we can kind of set up and plan things here just a tad. I'm going to go ahead and ramp myself. We see Octo V2 isn't coming out with a lot of speed. Some people could be very critical of me and claim that it's a mistake to potentially let myself accidentally draw into Dralamar next turn. But I consider the probability of being pretty low and just doing things on curve and on flow to be worth it. We do not draw into Dralamar, which is good, and we see Dralamar. So the tricky thing here is I don't think that I can protect the Dralamar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it at the bottom of my deck, and now I know that hey, if I can draw into it, and then OTK them the turn I draw it, in theory, I'm not much at risk. So that is the theory that we're going with here. So the way I want to do this is I would kind of like to clone a zero cost warp engineer. And to do that, you get a warp engineer and then you play clone and then that works. So what we do here is we get the second warp engineer. And that means we can cost reduce the other warp engineer, but we want to do that the same turn we play clone. So here I'm debating on whether or not I want to 4C to get closer to the Dralamar that I put at the bottom of my deck list already, or do I want to go ahead and play Warp Engineer Pip Clone. I like to 4C to get closer to Dralamar, and let's just go ahead, put everything at the bottom. Would be pretty standard there. Yeah, we want to get closer to the Dralamar, and here the debate is I've got 8 cards in hand. And at least we do not have to worry about mill at this point because we did put Dralamar at the bottom of the deck. We are keeping a mental count in our head of how many cards we foresee to know that situation. So here is a situation where we can play Warp Engineer to make Warp Engineer cost 0, and then we can play Clone, and we can also play Clone again. So that will give us 0 cost warp engineers in hand, which is key. When you go off with Dralamar, if you've got 0 cost warp engineers in hand, you can play Dralamar. You can play the 0 cost warp engineers, and then you can play Dralamar in the same turn. So when we 4C, we're again putting 2 cards in the bottom of our deck list. The idea being we want to set up our Dralamar. Now, here's a situation where Octo V2 needs to be applying some pressure here. We've got everything we need to win the game. They haven't played a cutthroat yet, but we are actively playing around the cutthroat. So what we can do here is we can clone and get a 3rd warp engineer that costs 0, which is pretty good. And we're just going to keep 4C'ing here. Keep 4C'ing, trying to get a tad bit closer to the main card. We get the Librarian's Prayer, and we know with the Librarian's Prayer, from the mathematics I've done, I can set up Dralamar for next turn. So I played Librarian's Prayer here, and we can do it so that we want to make sure to draw the cram, and then next turn we can play the Dralimar. Now what I did do was I made a slight error here. I have to play one card from my hand. I wanted to clone the Warp Engineer, but we actually have to play a card from our hand. So I am going to go ahead and just burn the Tracking Bolt. But I probably should have held back on the Librarian's Prayer and set up a clone. See, now if he has Cutthroat on back-to-back turns, I actually lose. As crazy as that sounds. No, wait. No, I still win. If he Cutthroats one Warp Engineer, I can still play the other one, and I've got the Pip. Yeah, so he just loses. Even if he's got Cutthroat, he can't stop it. He can't stop it. It's just too much. He can't mill it because it's the very top card of our deck. I guess if he was able to force me to draw it and then Cutthroat it on the same turn, he would be fine. So I was kind of curious if I misplayed this line when I played this live, because it was a little bit awkward. But now that I'm rewatching it, what I did was perfectly good. Perfectly good. Because we still have, the key is we still got the infinite combo if they have the Cutthroat inside. They could only take one Warp Engineer from my hand, and we would have been able to cost reduce it down to 4, and then we would have been able to play Dralimar and pip out the Ether Snap. We had enough mana to accomplish all of that. So here it's just all about getting our clicks in. We play the Shaped Blast because we see the Guild Enforcer. The Guild Enforcer is going to be just annoying, so why not remove it from the board? And we're just going to go ahead, use our spells to indeed get rid of that Guild Enforcer, and we can go ahead, keep on cycling here, keep on cycling, and we get that, and it's probably should actually 4C here. Well, I mean, there is card draw in the Sanctum, but it would be awkward if I didn't draw in a card draw. Of course, we draw into card draw here, so we're not fizzling out with the cram. We are going to be able to find lethal here somehow. There's just not enough ways left in my deck to brick here. The Recovered Knowledge, ideally to get back more cards that draw cards. We get, plenty of spells here. At the moment now, this is classical Dralimar. It's all about getting the clicks in. We played this game pretty well. I think I made a good decision putting Dralimar at the bottom of my list when I did, because if V2 had the Cutthroat, which he didn't draw this game, he would have been able to Cutthroat the Dralimar, and if he Cutthroats the Dralimar, I lose. There isn't another win condition in the deck. This deck is very narrow in terms of the way it wins. It wins exactly this way, but we drew all the necessary combo pieces this game in the correct order, and luckily for me, V2 was playing a very greedy Deception list, which did not apply pressure on me early. If he was a little bit more aggressive early, then the slower line that I took could have been considered pretty bad. But this works out. We get the win in game number 1 to kick off this match. Now it's time for game number 2. We won game number 1. Now we're queuing in with Relic Slayer War. Our opponent is queuing in with Death. The death could be board wipe death. It could be a Nubian death. It could be zombie death. We don't know we don't know what's going on here. I'm distracted by Axel at the moment and have to wait a little bit to pick our God Power. So I'm going to be under the assumption that we're either facing board wipe or Nubians based on what I know from V2 and the God Power they picked. They love control decks, so I would not be shocked if they're playing board wipe death in this game. We get I Need a Weapon and Unrestrained Power, which is pretty annoying if they don't have relic removal to deal with that situation. But we go ahead, play the I Need a Weapon. We get magic missile launchers, which isn't the weapon that I wanted to get, but it is the weapon that we settle for. They go ahead, they pass on 1, they pass on 2, so this definitely feels like a board wipe death situation. Though we've got a situation that does pose some questions. If they can't kill the magic missile launchers, and they do not have a front line, then unrestrained power on turn 4 and unrestrained power on turn 5 is indeed lethal. And, am I going to take the gamble to go for it? Well, he's literally doing nothing, so I figured I've got 2 unrestrained powers. Let's ask Octopus V2 the question. Can he deal with the situation? We'll go ahead and get 12 points of damage face and ask him, hey, do you got an answer for this? And it's not a good sign that we end up stalling here. Usually you slap down that Iron Tooth Goblin with authority if you've got it. Maybe you have a front line. Okay, maybe you've got a Siren of the Grave. He's probably got light bombs in hand. He's ready to sleep my minions and kill my minions. And he's just gonna Siren and just a nibble for the heal. He can Sulfuric Rain for card draw. But at the end of the day, the second unrestrained is indeed lethal, and this is about as quick as you're going to get. This is as fast as Relic War is going to win. Bad draw for V2, good draw for me. Sends me down to 4-2 in the tournament. 2 rounds left. I probably need to win the last two to accomplish top 32.